According to court documents obtained by News 4, Serena Fairfax filed for divorce from Justin in 2025. Just last month, the Fairfax County judge granted custody of the children to Serena and ordered Justin to move out of the home by the end of April. In the custody opinion, a judge wrote, quote, "The wife testified that heavy daily alcohol consumption by the father has become the norm." The court documents say Justin Fairfax spiraled into alcoholism and isolated himself from family involvement following the 2019 sexual assault allegations against him while he was in office. Allegations he denied but still weighed on him tremendously, the judge wrote. During the custody battle, the judge also found, quote, "The evidence also showed that in 2022, the father purchased a handgun with money intended for his children's horseback riding lessons." During the divorce proceedings, Serena Fairfax installed cameras throughout the family's home, according to police. Police say those cameras were rolling last night, just like they were back in January when Justin called police to claim that Serena had assaulted him.
We reviewed those cameras and we corroborated that the alleged assault never occurred.
Court documents show evidence that Serena Fairfax was actively involved in her children's lives, finding no evidence that Serena ever engaged in inappropriate conduct and maintained great relationships with the two kids. The court found, however, that Justin was currently unable to have a healthy relationship with his kids due to his alcohol use and self-isolation within the home.
I'm Madison McNamee reporting out of Northern Virginia today. We are in Annandale, just outside of the home of former Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, where he shot and killed his wife Serena before turning that gun on himself, taking his own life. This, we are told, was all amid a very messy divorce. We know that their two children were home at the time this all unfolded. Their son was actually the one who called 911. You can see this is still a very active scene here more than 12 hours later, because the police chief here tells us this is a very high profile family, calling this all a fall from grace. We are going to have live coverage for you from this scene starting at 4 p.m. We will be here all day bringing you the latest as this story develops.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. I have something here about the former Lieutenant Governor of Virginia and his wife. With that being said, let's get into it.
We're following breaking news, a terrible case of violence at the hands of a father who was once described as one of the most powerful men in Virginia.
Certainly this is a high-profile family. At one point in time, I think it's fair to say that Justin Fairfax, before he was Lieutenant Governor, while he served as Lieutenant Governor, and even afterwards, was a rising star politically, not just in Northern Virginia, but in Virginia.
Justin Fairfax was once the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Virginia, a husband and a father, and now he and his wife are dead.
From what I understand, at this early stage, former Lieutenant Governor Fairfax was recently served some paperwork associated with the
We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Justin Fairfax was once considered a rising star in the world of politics. And he was a husband, he was a father, and knowing who he was, it makes what happened overnight just so difficult to understand. And I'll warn you as we go through this, there are some difficult details, difficult pieces of audio that you are going to hear.
Claire's thinking that his dad might have stabbed his mom, and that she's laying on the ground bleeding, can see holes in her shirt. Heard a fight about a minute ago. I don't know where his father is now.
Now that's the call that dispatchers put out to law enforcement after a 911 call came in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. after midnight, and authorities responded to a home on Guinevere Drive.
It seems like the murder took place in the basement. It's described to me as a unfinished basement in the home.
Even though the initial 911 call came in as a stabbing, authorities say it was a gun used in this case. In the dispatch call, police found Serena Fairfax, Justin Fairfax's wife since 2006, the mother of his children, in the basement, and she was dead. At that point, it was unclear where the former lieutenant governor had gone.
I haven't cleared the house out yet, but I have the son with me downstairs. If Gina's on scene to clear the house, husband's car is still in the driveway.
Now, it sounds like police searched the area around the Fairfax's home looking for the former politician. It's unclear if they knew who he was at that time after they had found his wife dead in the basement.
It's going to be a 45-year-old unconscious, not breathing. We're looking for a black male, 5'1", clean-shaven.
But it was roughly 15 minutes after that first call came in that authorities found Justin Fairfax dead in a bedroom.
431 Alpha, we got another subject now in the bedroom upstairs.
Sure, 0023.
I think this is going to be our subject. He's got a firearm with himself, inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
Justin shot and killed his wife. He runs upstairs in the home and to the primary bedroom, apparently, and shoots and kills himself.
Police say the former lieutenant governor killed his wife of roughly 20 years, Dr. Serena Fairfax, who was a dentist. The two of them met as students at Duke University. They had been married since 2006, nearly 20 years. They have 2 teenage children, and it was their son who called 911. Now, there's no reason a story like this will ever make sense, no matter who's involved. But police say the Fairfaxes were going
you
through
can't make sense of this.
It appeared to be a messy one.
From what I understand at this early stage, former Lieutenant Governor Fairfax was recently served some paperwork associated with an upcoming court proceeding that apparently led to this incident last night. Both of their children, teenagers, the boys older than the girl, were in the house when it happened. That's horrible news for the family. Certainly a traumatic children to live through. But we know that it all kind of culminated last night.
Court documents show that it was Serena who filed for divorce in July of last year. She claimed the two of them had separated in June of 2024, but they were living together in the same home. They lived in separate bedrooms, but were under the same roof. The document also states that Fairfax had a post-nuptial agreement, and it appears that they had been arguing in court about that after Serena had filed for divorce. They disagreed over how that P&A was going to be applied in their divorce. I have a divorce attorney, Randy Kester, who's going to be joining me here in just a moment. There's an interesting law in Virginia pertaining to divorce and how that may have factored into what played out. There's still, of course, so much that we don't know. Now, the document doesn't state what the reason for the Fairfax's divorce was, but police say that Justin Fairfax did call them and make allegedly a false accusation of assault against his wife in January.
In January of this year, Mr. Fairfax calls the police and alleges that his wife assaulted him. We responded to that scene. There are
Of course.
set up inside the house. Apparently, Mrs. Fairfax, at some point during these divorce proceedings, set up a lot of cameras inside the home. We reviewed those cameras, and we corroborated that the alleged assault never occurred. So there was no arrest made. There was a report written, but the allegation that Mr. Fairfax made in January that Mrs. Fairfax assaulted him was proven to be untrue.
Police say that Fairfax was not cited for making a false report in that situation. Police say there were cameras inside the Fairfax home that Serena had put up as the divorce proceedings had gone on, and those cameras, police say, will be used as evidence in this case because police say the cameras were rolling last night when those gunshots were fired.
Well, I know that they were separated living together. I know that there are divorce proceedings that are underway, court appearances that are scheduled or pending in the very near future. I know he was served some paperwork recently. Apparently the paperwork indicated when he was next to appear in court. That may have been a spark. The detectives will figure that out. That led to this tragedy. Again, a mother shot and killed, taken from her children, and then he takes his own life.
Justin Fairfax served as lieutenant governor in Virginia under Democratic Governor Ralph Northam between 2018 and 2022. Fairfax was only the second African American ever to be elected to statewide office in Virginia. The controversy in his career came in 2019 when two women accused Fairfax of sexual assault they say allegedly happened between 2000 and 2004. Fairfax denied those allegations, which happened before he was married. Fairfax says his interactions with the women were consensual. One of them, according to CBS, claimed that they were sexually assaulted by Fairfax at the Democratic National Convention in 2004, and another accused him of sexual assault when they were students at Duke University, which is where he ended up meeting his wife. Now, Fairfax denied those allegations and said he took a polygraph test and passed. 2017, Fairfax came very close to becoming the governor of Virginia. You may remember Ralph Northam was at the center of a controversy when an old yearbook picture from 1984 showed him in blackface at a party where someone was dressed in a KKK costume. The yearbook was from when he was in medical school. Many people called for Northam to resign, but he stayed in office. Had he stepped down, it would have been Fairfax who would have taken that top job. Fairfax himself ran for governor in 2021, but he finished fourth in the Democratic primary and then left public office. Police say that Fairfax went into private law practice. One of his final Facebook posts from 2024 mentions that he represented 7 of the 12 families of victims killed in a 2019 mass shooting at a municipal building in Virginia Beach. It is one of the deadliest workplace shootings in U.S. history. And that post mentioned that Justin wanted more mental health services for those who were impacted by the shooting. One other note on his divorce: the documents that we have show that his wife had hired a law firm to represent her in the divorce proceedings. Fairfax appears to have been representing himself. Joining us now to break down some of the details of what may be at the center of what is a very, very tough story, family law attorney Randy Kessler. Thanks for your time today. I read through this document, and it just seems like it was a messy divorce, to say the least, between the Fairfaxes that was ongoing. What did you see when you read through it?
Well, I haven't seen the whole file, but from what I read, it was a, complicated divorce. And what was complicated about it was partially the laws involved, right? In Virginia, it seems, you have to be separated for a year. A lot of states have rules that say, we don't believe that you want a divorce. We want to make sure you want a divorce. You've got to be separated for a year before we give you a divorce. And maybe it was well-intentioned. Most laws are well-intentioned. I'm actually here right now, Chris, at the ABA Family Law Section meeting in Washington, where we talk about laws from all the different states and compare them. And a lot of people agree that when you try to make people stay together thinking that will make them stay married, you end up with things like this, right? We're grown-ups. If me and my wife work on our marriage for 4 years and it just doesn't work, why should the state tell me I have to officially be separated for a year? Why do they keep me in that limbo? And that seems to be part of the problem. I don't know what caused him to snap. I don't know what caused the divorce, the murder. But, keeping people in a bad situation with the hope that maybe they'll stay married because marriage is a good thing, which it usually is, sometimes backfires. This may be one of those sad occasions.
And according to police, Serena Fairfax had just served Justin Fairfax with papers, and police believe potentially that may have lit, the spark that led to this terrible case of violence. Because when I look at this, they're living in the same house, and it's the document says, I think she first said she wanted this divorce all the way back in 2024. And so, you have them separate bedrooms, but living in the same home. And it just seems like, from what we're learning, it was a very contentious relationship, to say the least. How is it that people can actually live under the same roof, but then have these legal proceedings that are going on?
Yeah, it sounds crazy. And look, and I'm fortunate we've got a healthy, if you call it, a divorce practice where most of our clients can afford to find a second residence. Most people can't afford it. These folks probably could afford it. I don't know if they could or could not, but it's not uncommon. In fact, it's very common that you file for divorce and you don't leave the house because no one wants to leave the house where the children are, right? I'll leave the house, but then I'm leaving my children. Or I'll leave the house, but usually you have to figure that stuff out. What is going to be the parental arrangement? It's a scary thing to leave a house and not be guaranteed you're going to have access to your children or to your things. So a lot of times people start the case. When we start our divorce cases, it's often our advice that we want the client to be away from their spouse, because that's the danger inflection point. When someone gets served with divorce papers, it's a statement that the person who you love and care for and chose to be with the rest of your life has rejected you. As nice as we can say it, as calmly, as vanilla, we can spell it out that this will be a simple divorce, no hard feelings, it's just not going to work for our client. There's just no nice way to say, I don't want to be married to you anymore. It's just the most offensive slap in the face, and sometimes people react harshly. It's a very terrible situation emotionally for most people. Every now and then two people come to it at the same time, and it's a more simple, never an easy one, more simple process. And that's what I pray for with clients. What can I hope? They say, me and my spouse, they both agree that we shouldn't be together. We just have to figure out how to divide the assets and share the children. That's my dream client that comes in. Unfortunately, there are not many like that, and we have to wait until they both accept that there's going to be a divorce.
So in this divorce document, they're talking about a P&A. I assume that's a prenuptial agreement.
Actually, Chris, I think it was called a postnuptial agreement because they were already married. So
that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? So how did that, like in terms of the legal terms, I know we're talking about this like waiting period where it said like in the P&A that he would buy her out of the house, and there's some things related to like mortgage payments, and then he was contesting that. And then apparently in January, he actually won that part of it, it seemed. Like, can you just, as someone who looks at these documents all the time, I certainly don't, like, what am I actually reading?
So from a legal perspective, from an intellectual perspective, it was very interesting. First of all, we all know what a premarital or prenuptial agreement is. Before the marriage, you decide how you're going to divide the monies. You can't divide the children ahead of time because things change. Somebody who's a good parent today may not be tomorrow. But you pre-decide how to divide the monies. A postnuptial agreement does the same thing. It's just signed after the nuptials, after the marriage. So you can have a postnuptial agreement signed the day after the wedding, 10 years after the wedding, and it decides how to divide property. What's intellectually interesting to me in this matter is that in Virginia you have to be separated for a period of time before the judge can grant the divorce. And what the judge found was that because they negotiated a postnuptial agreement saying in that we're signing this because we're going to try to make our marriage work, but in the event our marriage doesn't work, here's how we divide assets. Therefore, they were not in a valid period of separation. So he sort of turned the postnuptial agreement on its head to say, you can't get a divorce yet, but you should go on to try again. So that was sort of interesting. I don't think I've seen that before, especially because in Georgia, you don't have to have a waiting period. If you want a divorce, you figure it out, you get divorced.
Because then I also just, like, from the legal part of it, there's that intellectual back and forth, but then it's like police today saying that there was this call back in January, which was around the time, that is the month that, you know, the court decided on that particular issue where Justin Fairfax allegedly accused Serena Fairfax of assaulting him. She had installed cameras inside the house, and so police looked at those. No assault occurred. They say that the bar is pretty high to show that someone filed a false police report or something like that. So he didn't face charges. But it's like, how does the court system then look at that and say, well, yeah, we have this waiting period that we have to kind of figure out. But at the same time, it just seems like a dangerous situation, at least on the outside, when you have something like that playing out, and yet they still are allowed to live in this. I mean, you can live wherever you want, but like they're still allowed to live in the same home. It just seems like there's some red flags that are coming up about how this is going.
And those people who watch the show for this broadcast, I'd love to talk about legislators or vote on certain laws because legislators all think that making people wait to get a divorce until they've been separated for a year helps. In this situation,
it does help.
They were together. She might not have been able to afford to move out. She didn't, you know, when you can get a quick divorce, a quicker divorce, you know how much money you're going to have to afford to move out. You know what your time with the children is going to be. Yes, this was obviously a volatile situation. Anybody who's filed papers against their spouse is concerned that it could one day escalate. Somebody could just snap or break. Just the fact that, you know, he's a public figure, nobody's immune from this kind of behavior. You know.
And I'm going to tell you something else too. There's also some women who file divorce papers to quote unquote get their man to act right. And 9 times out of 10, it always fails. Women, don't do divorce paperwork to quote unquote get your man right. It's dumb. It's dumb and it's stupid.
Yes, there should have been telltale signs. But Chris, we can't go in and change the law for one case. The law in this case is the law. In all cases, you have to be together. You have to be separated for a period of a year before you grant your divorce. I think the back and forth that might have affected the division of property. It might have affected the parenting time with the children. You know, unfortunately, with both of them being deceased, we'll never know, you know, what their lives could have been like. Yeah, that's another sign that sometimes, and I also want to be clear, most legislators have good intentions, and when they say there's a waiting period, there are often exceptions. If there's family violence, if there's domestic violence, you can shorten the period, you know. But what if there's almost domestic violence, And I know that my spouse is going to be violent when this happens. But it hasn't happened yet, and I can't prove it. Am I being forced to stay and try to stay married until something bad happens? It's a tough situation. I think if you're grown up, if you can make the decision to get married, you should be able to make the decision to get divorced. And I have beef with legislators who say we're doing a good thing by making people stay married for a year and try to work it out before we as the state will allow them to get a divorce. You know, we don't have a year-long waiting period to get married. Maybe that should be the answer. You should have to date for a year and know each other well before you get quickly married. Maybe that would be a better solution. But
Yeah,
it's just a tough.
that will work
There's no
too.
one size fits all. There's no right answer, but that is sort of an awkward
Damn, I
issue
need to pull my nose.
that I sort of have a pet peeve about.
No, and it's a good point, because I think on the surface you
Speaking
understand
of that,
like the good
be right
intention
back.
behind it, of like you don't want people who are like, you know, you get into a fight and you're upset and they're just going to run to the courthouse and then, you know, suddenly you're divorced and then, you know, that ends up being a mess. But it just seems like, from what we know about what's been alleged at this situation, that they were living in the same home. And then you have this day, and I know I kind of keep hitting on the same point. It's just like around the time police say he has served divorce papers, like they're supposed to go to bed in the same home at night, and it leads to this altercation. We don't know if he legally owned the gun, not that that particularly matters, but you add a firearm to the situation, that doesn't make things any safer. And it's just like the idea that there's like, I mean, even outside of the state of Virginia, like on that day that papers are filed, I'm sure you've been there for that, like it's emotional. How do they end up doing it? And then, you know, the court just says, all right, we'll see you at your next court appearance.
Well, first of all, most Americans, half of all people that file for divorce, don't even get legal advice. They Google it or they research, and they don't have lawyers. I'm going to give some free legal advice that I think is very valuable. And not everything is appropriate for everybody, but if you're going to serve your spouse with divorce papers, or any lawsuit for that matter, think about where you can be that's safe for the immediate time period following that. For the first few minutes, for the first few hours, for the first few days. There's nothing illegal about saying I'm going to be out of town, or moving out of town, or moving to a hotel for a few days until the other person digests what's happening and can get back to a rational way of dealing with it. It's just, you know, if we save one person's life by getting that out there, great, let's put the word out there. But yes, you're exactly right, Chris. When you get served papers, even though you should expect it maybe because you know your marriage is bad or your spouse has told you they're going to do it, there's still nothing that can prepare you for seeing in black and white your spouse doesn't want to be with you anymore and they want a divorce and they want you to pay money, they want your kids. I mean, it's just a harsh thing. And it's a harsh day for anybody, the most solid, stable person, a lieutenant governor, former lieutenant governor, who can hold it together in public, even for him. That's a harsh reality to face.
Professionally, he was an attorney, and I noticed on the divorce document he was representing himself. She had a law firm. He's representing himself. I mean, clearly, I believe he was in private practice since he left public office. I mean, this was someone who was a real rising star in politics. You know, was the second most powerful person in a lot of ways in Virginia government for 4 years. But at the same time, I mean, you bring the emotional part into it. Even someone who's an incredibly skilled lawyer. And I know as a divorce attorney, you'd like to see people hire divorce attorneys, I'm sure. But at the same time, like, you know, she has this law firm representing her, but then he, you know, going through this, and he's the one who is being divorced. You know, she divorced him. Like, how does that play out, I guess, emotionally for people? Like, is that a good idea to represent yourself, even though I'm sure you're saving a lot of money?
You know, it's sound like a sales pitch for my book, Divorce.
Well, right, that's why I said
But the truth of that is, I'm not saying go out and hire lawyers and spend thousands of dollars. Have an initial consultation. There are divorce lawyers that will meet with you for free for an hour. Get some knowledge. Knowledge is power. You know, people are using AI and Google, which it can be okay, it can be a start, but, you know, do some homework. And why not find a good lawyer for an hour? Even if you have to pay $200, $500 for 1 hour of time, or find somebody that will do it for free. Then at least you'll know what you're missing by not having a lawyer involved. Because, you know, a lot of lawyers even that don't do divorce want to dabble in it and think, I can do this. But it's not just law. I mean, we see in this case more clearly than almost any other case. It's law, it's human nature, it's emotion, it's common sense, it's practicality. And divorce lawyers who've been through this vicariously over and over and over see some commonalities. And maybe, just maybe, a divorce lawyer would have been able to prep them a little bit better, help them, guide them towards therapy. Who knows? But yes, I agree. It's not a good idea to proceed without a lawyer, but if you can't afford one, then you do the best you can. But take a meeting, find a meeting, get knowledge. There are so many lawyers out there. It's sort of hard to say, well, I couldn't find anybody. Yeah, represent yourself. There's an old saying, right, Chris? You represent yourself, you have a fool for a client.
Yep.
That's a good saying. Yeah,
Got a fool for a client.
Cases, and I just imagine, like, if you're going through all these different motions back and forth, like, you being the person involved in the case, like, there's a level of emotion that comes with that, where I'm sure when you have an attorney, there's almost a buffer where they can think with more of a clear mind. I don't know how much that had to factor into all of this. I mean, of course, it's just a horrific story today. Just for this family. You think of the family too, the kids, man. It's tough.
You're right. Having a lawyer is a checks and balances. Look, it's partially why we have so many lawyers. We have 20 lawyers in our divorce firm. So that if I, hear from somebody and I want to initially react and say, yes, that's terrible, I can stop, take a breath, talk to my colleague and say, what kind of advice should I get? If you're doing it on your own, there's nobody to bounce it off of. Or if it's your family member, your parents are going to say, son, take care of yourself. You need somebody objective to say, stop. 5 years from now, you're going to look back at this and think, did I handle it the right way? So giving some time for reflection. And if you can't afford a lawyer, go to the person you trust the most patient person, not the hothead, but somebody who's patient, your priest, your rabbi, your imam, whoever it is, that can give you a second to breathe and figure out what's best long term. It's a hard situation. And, it's a tough one. There are resources. Use the resources.
Yeah, really good point on a day where a lot of people are going to be focusing on the issue of divorce because of what happened just outside Washington, D.C. Randy Kessler, family law attorney. Always great to have you bring some context to this here on Law and Crime.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
That will do
And that's it.
Presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. We're also streaming on...
A former deputy governor of Virginia and his wife were found dead in their home on Thursday morning in what authorities described as a murder-suicide. Investigators say Justin Fairfax shot his wife multiple times before turning the gun on himself. Both of the couple's teenage children were home when the incident occurred, and their son called police just after midnight. Fairfax, the second black person elected to statewide office in Virginia, served as lieutenant governor from 2018 to 2022, which is the second highest executive office in the state. His tenure was overshadowed by 2 allegations of sexual assault, accusations he denied. County Police Chief Kevin Davis said the murder-suicide appeared to stem from marital problems, although the investigation remains ongoing. The couple had been living together but were separated and in the midst of divorce proceedings, according to court records. Fairfax ran for Virginia governor in 2021 but lost in the primary election.
I saw this today and I was like, we got to have a conversation because I am tired of seeing these types of articles. Justin Fairfax, who is the former lieutenant governor for Virginia, killed his wife and himself today. Yeah, apparently from the articles that I've read, apparently they were going through it was domestic because they were either separating or in the process. They were in their unfinished basement. He shot her and then went upstairs to the bedroom and shot himself. And they have children, and it was the teenage son who called the police, and that's sad. But I'm seeing it happen all too frequently. And when Kankle's guy was running for re-election and they were doing all of these things to stop women from having agency over their body, experts were saying this is going to lead to more violence against women. And I have just seen too much of it this week to not say anything. In DeKalb County, 2 women and a man were found dead. It seems like it was just random, right? It was just random. And there was another case that I heard about. This lady was walking her dog and she was found with her pants down and she was shot. And apparently, I read an updated article. Apparently, she was stabbed as well. Now, this is in connection with the 3 other killings, 2 women and a man. There was a homeless man, 26-year-old dude, just killing, no correlation. And then we see where the Florida vice mayor was found dead in her home. This lady right here, her husband charged with murder. What are we doing? And then I saw this the other day, which this came out in March, but it's gained traction now, where there's a online community. It's called a Rape Academy, and it is where men learn how to rape their wives or girlfriends without them knowing it, how to drug them. No date rape drugs, just, sleeping pills and things like that. 62 million. Yeah. The Black community feels that everything that's going on in America right now is not up to us to solve because we did not start it. And I feel this same way about the violence against women. It's not our job to solve it because we've been yelling and screaming from the mountaintops and no one is saying anything, right? I feel that it's up to men to stop this. Yeah, I could be wrong. Let's get in the comments and discuss. But men, if you don't know who this woman is and what happened to her, that's part of the problem too. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say. This is nuts.